My earliest memories of craft, which I assume would be the same for most of you, would be of folding paper into the shapes of a boat or a bird. Folding paper is one of those fundamental crafts that remain delightfully analog. The tactile nature of creating beautiful structure can be an addictive feeling and is one that my guest today has formed into a career. On Everything Comes Together, I'll be speaking with people in the broader photography, architecture, and design communities. Rather than only talking about their work, we will be talking about them, their personal journey, the challenges they overcame, and the most pivotal incidents in their lives that made them who they are today. So now, let's get to it. Aditi Anuj is an origami artist whose work you might have come across if you watch a certain series on Netflix or if you follow Indian interior design. We talk about how she made the move from textile design to origami, her interests in working with architects and designers, and the importance of creative freedom. I just wanted to let you know that the Everything Comes Together podcast has a new home online. At everythingcomestogether.com, you can watch full episodes to get the whole story, or you can watch a treasure trove of playlists. On these playlists, a variety of creators from across the country present their experiences and opinions on a set of topics to give you a complete understanding of the work you love. Find out more at everythingcomestogether.com.
I've been born and brought up in Agra. Ever since I can remember, I remember my house in Agra, my lovely lawn in Agra. My father is a doctor. He's a microsurgeon, and my mother is an artist. As a child, I remember being extremely loved at home and extremely exposed to the creative side of life, not just studying all the time, but also being exposed to, like, my father was really interested in gardening. So I remember gardening with him as a child. And with my mother, I remember making artworks with her, painting on the walls, making paintings for the house. I remember doing all of that. So, as a child, I would say I was always exposed to a lot of creativity, a lot of right side of the brain, exercising a lot of right side of the brain. So, yeah, that was my childhood. And also, my grandparents were very creative. Like my grandmother was into singing, so she would often take out her harmonium and she would start singing with us. So my childhood throughout was always very playful, very loving, and extremely creative, like I mentioned.
That sounds exactly like the sort of environment that you want to grow up in, especially if you're going to be a creative person in the future, right? Professionally, I mean, it's not just about being professionally creative or creative on your own, especially if you're going to build a career in it. You want to have that nurturing environment around
But at
you.
that time, I never knew that I'm going to have a creative career. I was just enjoying life the way it was. I never thought of, becoming an artist one day. In fact, that was really far-fetched, if you ask me honestly, because and later when I talk about my school, I'm going to talk about how that was never encouraged. So
Yeah.
art and craft was always a part of was always something that you did when you did not have to study. When you were done studying, when it was playtime, then you would take out your drawing book, maybe make a sketch, maybe make a house out of mud. I mean, I've played a lot with mud and made utensils, made houses in the backyard.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was all playtime. It was never taken seriously, but at the same time, it was never discouraged, which I'm really grateful for. So I mean, we did all of that.
But that's great. I mean, and you said that your grandparents were very creative, and your mom is an artist. What does she do?
She makes paintings,
Okay.
3D paintings. She also, because she comes from Calcutta, she initially started her artist career by making shola wood statues. If you know, shola wood is a type of paper which is made out of banana leaf.
Okay.
So she started making statues out of that because in Calcutta, during Durga Puja, they make Ma Durga out of shola wood.
Right.
So that's how she started. But then she got into painting, and then she opened an art school in Agra, where I come from. A very small art school. I mean, where people would come and had their own hobby, practice their own hobbies. So they would learn painting, drawing, sketching, statue making, calligraphy, things like that. My mother is still teaching in Agra.
And so when you were growing up, you said that in school, academics were a lot more important to the school itself, right? So
Absolutely. And I would not deny, even to my parents, they always wanted me to, if not come first, at least, be at the top of the class, perform well in school. But they were never discouraging of me to practice arts at the same time,
Yeah.
But yes, in school, I would say the vision of school was not as broad as I would have wished for.
right, I think that's something that a lot of people will be able to
It's
to
especially
relate to.
because I also because I come from a very small city, and I feel that the size of the city is directly proportionate to the vision of the city, right? Because they see small, their vision also is very small. When I came to Mumbai for the first time after college, I realized that the vision of a city can be so broad at the same time. I mean, they're two parallel universes running at the same time, and they're so different from each other. How people think, how people live, how people dream is so different, which
Yeah.
is so important as a child. I mean, children in Mumbai would have bigger dreams than children in Agra,
Yeah.
It's because what they see, that's what they perceive, sadly. So I would say the vision of the entire city played a very important role in the overall development of a child.
So to sort of break out of that smaller city, you had a lot of opportunities to travel, I assume?
Yes, thankfully, my parents love traveling. Touchwood, they still travel a lot. I mean, now they spend whatever time, money they're left with on traveling. So ever since we were really young, my parents used to take us everywhere with us, whether they're road trips or they're international trips. We would go everywhere with them, and that sort of helped us get out of the mentality of the city, and also have a broader idea of what the world looks like,
Yeah.
feels like, what are the possibilities of life, which are not possible
Yeah.
to see otherwise, coming from a smaller city. So, yes, we traveled a lot, and I'm very thankful about that, because I would always talk to my peers about it, my classmates, and I realized that nobody really travels that much.
No.
So I feel extremely lucky to do that.
Yeah.
And also because my father was a doctor, he had conferences all over the world. So that was a good excuse for us to travel with them.
Right, of
So
course.
wherever he had to go for a conference, we would all tag along. And while my father was busy in the meeting, in the conference, my mother would just take both of us around, and we have seen all the cities all alone all three of us alone,
Yeah.
just exploring it on our own. Yeah, so I have very vivid memories of doing that.
Okay.
So,
and you have siblings?
yeah. Yes, I have a younger brother.
Okay.
He's 6.5 years younger to me.
Okay. That's a pretty
Yes.
big age gap to
Yes,
growing
because
up.
my parents never planned to have another one, but I was after their life that I want a sibling. So they had no other option but to give me one. And I'm so glad they did, because
Yeah.
he is the best human in the world. He's the closest to me. And yeah, I mean, we have had our share of fights, but yeah, he's the closest human that is there.
Yeah. So, I mean, you were also talking a little bit about speaking with your peers and classmates and friends. Were you a very social kid, or Did
I
you
was
sort of
very,
keep to
very
yourself?
social, very, very social. Again, that's something that comes from my parents. My husband likes to call it host mode. He always says that your parents are constantly in host mode. Well, even I am. I'm always trying to make everybody around me comfortable, make everybody around me happy, by doing
Yeah.
things or by bringing things to them. But I think that's what made me social. I was never afraid to talk to new people, to meet new people, or whether it's a child or whether it's an old person. I could talk to anybody and everybody. Also because I I grew up with my grandparents, so they
Yeah.
made the environment very comfortable for me. So I had all kinds of people coming to my house all the time. We always had guests coming to my place. So that sort of made everything, that sort of made me very social and always in a need to talk. So yes, I was,
Yeah.
I, yes, I would like to call myself extremely social, extremely talkative.
And how was that for you in school? Because I think school is a very it's an environment which is very controlled, right? So, what was
Yes,
your
I mean,
experience like in school?
so I do have some issues with my school, to be honest, but I would not rate my school as very bad, but I would not even call my school to be a good school,
Yeah.
honestly, because the very important thing that my school lacked was vision. And I wish and I really hope that now they have come up with a better, broader vision. If not, then I continue to feel sorry for them. But the whole idea of letting a child know, or the whole environment that you create around a child, where a child feels that he is special and anything is possible in the world for him,
Yeah.
like he or she can do anything in their life. I think it's very important to create that environment because that helps and that encourages the child to excel at whatever he or she is doing.
Yeah.
It's not just studies that are important. I mean, yes, studies are important, but that's not the only thing in life that they need to do.
Inspiring them
But
is
if
so
a
important, which almost never
It's so
happens.
important. It's so important. And in order to
Yeah.
help a child
Yeah.
have a broader vision, you need to have a even broader vision. Only then will you be able to help a child. So back in school, I felt like I'm in a rat race, continuously in a rat race where constantly everybody is fighting to come first in the class, or even if they're not fighting. I mean, people like me who knew that we could never become that good at studies. So there was a point when we gave up. Like I gave up. I
Yeah.
didn't even try to study because uh, I knew that is not possible. But at the same time, they had killed my hopes to do anything else or try anything else in my life. That I actually became like a rebel, uh, especially at the end of the school when I just did
Yeah.
not want to study. I did not. I didn't feel like studying because the environment was not right. I was not very happy with my teachers, and the overall morale of the place was not very encouraging, I would say. So yeah, I mean, that plays a very important role
Yeah.
in what you want to do or what you should do.
But if this sort of demotivated you when you were in school, where did you feel that creative spark was lit? Because as you move into college, you straight away go into a more creative environment at the National Institute of Fashion Technology. So,
Yes.
what made you head in that direction? Was that always the thing?
Okay, that's a very interesting question. So in class 12th, I did not really study, honestly.
Yeah.
I did not get good grades. And I had realized that studies is not my forte. I cannot study to save my life.
Yeah.
So I had to find a way out where I would be able to do what I really liked doing and at the same time be able to establish myself, make money out of it,
Yeah.
have a steady job. So and because I came from a very creative background, like my parents being so creative, I thought of trying my hand on designing.
Yeah.
And honestly, I filled up the form of NIFT just like that, just trying my luck if I was made for it. I had no idea whether I could break it. Break it or not. I had no idea. I was just trying my luck there. And it so happened that I missed out on NID forms, so I had only Pearl and NIFT left.
Yeah.
So I filled up those forms and I sat for the exam, having no idea whether I'm going to make it or not. And I remember my exam didn't really go that well. So I had very little hope with what is going to happen with my life.
Yeah.
But with God's grace, I think I made it to NIFT, and thankfully, it's like I made the right choice at the right time in my life.
Yeah.
By giving that exam, by filling that form. Otherwise, I have no idea how my life would have turned. So yeah, I mean, I'm glad that I recognized that I have a creative side in me, and that I can water that seed a little bit and make it and turn it into a plant.
Yeah.
So I was able to recognize it at the right time. That is what I would say. And this goes for anyone, when my students now ask me, how did you know it? How did you start making money out of it? How do you know that this is the right thing? I always tell them, just follow your heart. If you enjoy doing something, you will find ways to make money out of it.
Yeah.
But you have to really love something completely, that you're ready to give whatever it takes. But you have to love it so much. So try to find love. Once you do, you will find ways to make money out of it. Don't worry about that.
Absolutely.
Just love something so much that you are ready to do it for the rest of your life, or for a very long period of time. I mean, I don't know if I'm going to do origami for the rest of my life, but I'm definitely going to do it till the time I love it, till the time I'm till the time I'm having fun.
I think that's the minute you stop having fun when you're doing a creative job, your work
That's
suffers.
when it becomes a job.
No, and then the work suffers because you can see that there was no inspiration behind that. There was no motivation to do something new and different and fresh.
Yeah.
Because that makes such a big difference, right? So, so now you have you've gotten into NIFT, and I think it's a 4-year course that you were doing there. What was that? What was the experience of NIFT like coming out of school? Because you jumped straight from a sheltered school environment to a college environment. Was that very different?
Yes, it was very different. My school was, I come from a girls' school. And so the whole mentality of the school was very different. Of myself was very different, because I had never really been around boys. The only boys that I had been around were either my cousins or my brother's friends. So, of course, it was a very different environment. I was also younger, in that age where you are attracted towards, where you have that. When you want to be in the best of your appearance, right? Of the best of your appearance. So, at that time, imagine entering a class which has boys, and you suddenly don't know how to be, whether you should be cool, whether you should be feminine, or whether you should be I don't know. There were so many questions running in my head. So in the beginning of college, I was still figuring out how to be. What kind of person do I want to be? What kind of character do I want to project out there? So of course, that was initially that was how college was. But at the same time, because I had just come out of school, and for the first time I was all alone, I could be out late, I could be chilling with friends, and I did not have to take permission from my parents for every single thing. It was very, very exciting, very exciting. And I would not say that I did not misuse it. I did. And like all of us do. So, but yeah. So college was fun at the same time, because there was not much stress on work or I did not take much stress. I was just enjoying life, getting to know the other gender, falling in love, if I may. So, yeah, I was doing all of that in college and also studying a little bit. So that was college for me.
I like how you just said
A
studying
little bit, just to
bit.
survive, just to be on the surface, you know.
Yeah. But was NIFT a good creative environment to
Okay,
be in?
so because that was the first creative environment that I was ever exposed to. It was nice. It was good for me. I enjoyed being in that space because everybody was creative around me. There was creativity everywhere, whether they're events, whether it's decor, whether it's the kind of conversations that we're having with people, whether it was my faculty, everything, everywhere around me, I could feel creative and could exercise creativity. So yes, of course, it was a very interesting space to be in, and it really helped me develop and also understand creativity at a much deeper level than the kind of space that I came from. But like I said, that was the first environment that I landed. It's like, how do I explain this? It's like you have imagined eating a pizza for a very long time, and finally you get to eat that pizza, but that's the first pizza that you've had. So you can't really say that. So that pizza becomes the best pizza in the world till the time you don't try any other pizza, right? It was like that. So it was like that.
Yeah.
I don't know whether this example does justice to what I want to say, but But after NIFT, when I went to NID, that's when I realized, oh my God! So this is what actual creativity feels like. This is what an actual creative space feels like, and it was like a blast in my head. I mean, I was just exposed to a different universe of creativity where. Passion was in everybody's nerves, and people were not doing it just to make money. They were doing it because they were loving the process, and that's why they were a part of it. Whereas in NIFT, I honestly never experienced that. They were doing it because they were supposed to do it, because they were supposed to be creative, but by the end of it, everybody was just making money out of it. So that was the major difference that I felt personally between NIFT and NID, the kind of space and what the space gives you.
I've heard so much about the NID experience. I think I can take clips from various people's interviews where they talk about their experience there, and it's something special.
It is a different world, Sreenag. It's a different world. It's a bubble, and I would not say that it's very beautiful to be in that world, because honestly, it's like a bubble. The minute you're in that gate, you're someone else, and the minute you come out of that gate, you come back to the real world, and you realize that the world is not as beautiful as you imagined it to be. And not as easy as you imagined it to be, because there's another struggle happening outside that gate. But yes, there is something about that space, the gravity of that space, the charisma of that space that makes you feel like you can do anything. I think that feeling is very important. That feeling is very important. Because until and unless you don't feel like you can do anything, you can't do anything. You have to feel it. So I think that's what NID gives you. It makes you believe that anything is possible. You have to just love it enough to make it possible.
I'm sure you would have friends who studied at colleges that taught a variety of subjects. So one guy would probably be would be studying some form of commerce. Another one would be studying some form of perhaps the arts or economics or English or some language or philosophy, something like that. And I feel in institutions like that, what happens is it's not like knowledge is a waste of time, but sometimes you end up being forced into taking certain classes which have nothing to do with what you want to do, right? But when you study at a specialized school like NID, I assume that such classes are not there at all. you're 100% immersed in what you're actually interested
Exactly.
in.
They're not there. They're not there. Although there are some subjects that you would not like to study, but you would have to. Like, I remember having this course in NIFT called IPR, where we studied about the
Right.
the law side of design. So, which of course, it's a boring subject. You had to again go back to books, read them,
Yeah.
mug them up, and give an exam. But other than that, all the courses were, I would say, very exciting and very much related to what you wanted
Right.
to do, other than studying, like you mentioned, other than doing things that you were not interested in doing, but you had to do because they were part of the course. So thankfully, we didn't have
So why
that
don't you,
in
can you just
design.
give me an example of the sort of important projects that you may have been working on while you were at NID? Because I assume that these projects would be a little bit more almost like a thesis, right? So where you have to put in a lot of research and things like that. Yeah.
Okay, so my most favorite project that I did in NID was the one that happened in the last semester. And I
Yes.
spoke to you about it. The course was called Space, and it was taken by an architect, and that was the first time I was exposed to an architect and the world of architecture, and I was so
Yeah.
amazed by it. So basically, what we had to do is, the brief of the project was that we had to choose a space within the college, find out the problems of that space, and by using textiles, because I came from textiles, like
Yeah.
my department was textiles. By using textiles, you had to come up with a solution to that problem. So the very interesting. So my favorite project was when we took our amphitheater
Yeah.
as our main space, and our amphitheater of course, is an open space surrounded by trees, and there's always something or the other happening in the amphitheater. But so we came up with a lot of problems that people face in the amphitheater. We took a lot of interviews, filled up a lot of made people fill up questionnaires. So we did a part of our research, and the most common problem that people had with the space was that there are a lot of birds in the trees, and you can't really sit under them because they're all pooping all the time in the evening, especially when any function was happening at 6 o'clock in the evening. All these birds would want to sit on the trees and poop. So you
Yeah.
couldn't really sit under it, That was the biggest problem. So so by the end of it, there'll be a little space left where there are no trees on top. So everybody would try to sit there. So this entire sitting space
Yeah.
that existed would not be usable anymore because of the poop. And the whole floor would be covered with it. So much so that the women next day would be cleaning the floor with scrubbers. So so we wanted to study the fall of poop and how the concentrated areas, the scanty areas. So how we did that was, one afternoon we bought a bunch of very cheap chart papers, and we spread it all over the amphitheater, all over it. And then in the evening we waited. We sat there and we waited under it for the birds to come. Oh my God, we had so much fun in that project. So much fun. We were 3 of us in a group, and oh my God, we had so much fun. And the next day, we went there to collect those papers, to take photos, to study the
Yeah.
concentration. And yeah, so that was a very interesting project. I think that was my favorite project because we got to look at a very different side of textiles, and also exploring a new field, completely new field, which was architecture, was very exciting for me, because after doing that course, actually, I realized how much I love spaces and how much I want to experience spaces, and how spaces experience us, vice versa. So,
Telling somebody that your
yeah, so
favorite
that course
project was where you sat and waited for birds to come and poop.
for birds
So
to
what did you
poop.
do with all the? So you took the pictures and you documented it. What did you end up doing after that with that project?
We made so in my college, of course, I don't know how practical
Yeah.
it was, but the solution that we came up with was retractable roofs. which again we used origami for it. And we made retractable roofs, which could be made out of fabric. You could take them out, wash them, and then put them back again. So every time there's an event happening, the students can just roll it up, like how you have shop shutters. So you could roll it, open the roof as much as you want, or as much crowd there is. And these cables would be tied to the trees. So we studied the trees, how the cables are going to tie to them, and how the fabric is going to move. My God, all of that we did. I don't know how practical it was, or if it would ever happen.
Did it end up happening? Did they end up making
No, they didn't. It was just a class project.
Oh.
But we did make a small prototype with the trees, with the amphitheater, with the retractable roofs. Oh my God, I have photos of it and videos.
I would love to see those photos.
I'll show you. You will die laughing.
Yeah. No, but I think this is so important, right? The minute I introduce you on this particular episode, you will be introduced as someone who's made a living in origami. And the thing is, now most of the people who will be watching this are going to be young architects, right? It is so interesting that they will never expect this particular story to be there. Which is why it has to be there.
Trust me, I mean, it is so interesting to tell people what I do and then to get their reactions, because there are some people where there are some times when I would want to correct them ki, no, that's not all that I do, but sometimes I don't even pay attention. I'm like, just understand whatever you can, whatever is you're capable of understanding. Like the other day, my landlord is trying to explain what I do to one of his relative, and he said, ये वो पेपर की चिड़िया मछली नहीं होती है, वो बनाती है ये. It's like, good for you. You understand that much. I'm happy. So it's very interesting.
It's better than how bad it could be.
Yeah, exactly, right? And then people come up with very interesting questions. So you make money out of it? I'm like, I try to. Can you make money out of it? Yeah, but
most common question.
Yeah, but it's very nice when parents approach you and tell you how much their kids are interested in origami and how good they are at it. And by God, they are. I have so many students who are so good at folding, have come up with their own models. And just because their parents see me and they see a potential in it, they are able to encourage their children to practice it and to practice it further. Otherwise, I don't think their parents would have been able to encourage their children that much, because there is no precedence in it, right? So they don't know who to look at. So sometimes I feel very thankful that that I'm a good example for them of how you can practice what you love doing and also make money out of it at the same time. So
So, speaking about the practical side of work and what you're encountering today, when you were in NID, did you do any, internships that were really important towards where you are today?
Not really. My interest to internships, yes, of course. The final internship that I did was based completely on origami, was with an architect. But within the course, we had a couple of internships that we had to do, which was 1 month, 2 months, where, because I was not exposed to architecture before, or spaces before, or origami before, so I couldn't connect that to textiles. So I was stuck to textiles. I was doing internship with export houses, with mills. But for my final diploma project, which is a 6-month thesis where you have to work under a company and come up with your own project, like a physical project. That's when I did it with an architect, and I made an art piece for the...
What was it like working in an architect's office when you're not an architect?
It was very interesting. I have so many stories about it. So many. So that was the first time I was in an architecture office. I had no idea what architects do. I had no idea uh, how work happens in that space, right? So
Yeah.
for the first time, I would in my first on my first day, I would see these girls. I saw these girls sitting on on their computers, all young girls,
Yeah.
freshly out of college, and they were drafting. So I was very new to drafting. I mean, I had read The Fountainhead because I wanted to, because I was interested in architecture when I started my internship. So I
Yeah.
read that. So I got to know a little bit about architecture and the terms that architects use.
Yeah.
Terms like facade, terms like drafting. I mean, they were all very new to me, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, interesting story is, so I would go to office every day with a bunch of A4 size papers. I would sit on my desk with sometimes my feet up on the table, and I would be folding the entire day, just sitting, folding and throwing things on my table. So there would be a pile of origami on my table by the end of the day. And all these poor girls who were interning would be sitting on their computer the whole day, would come to me in the evening and they're like, "You get paid for doing this?" And then because it was unbelievable for them as well to have somebody like me coming from textiles doing origami in an architectural firm. I mean, think about it, right? It has no connection.
Right.
But I find myself extremely lucky that I could find a project that gave me a space to exercise origami coming from a textile background.
So, what was the project that you worked on that you needed to do so much origami for?
So Kohinoor Group was coming up with a building in Mahim.
Okay.
Do you know Mahim?
Yeah. Yeah.
In Mumbai.
Yeah.
So near Shivaji Park, that building is still incomplete. It's called Kohinoor Square, and they were getting the marketing office ready because they were wanting to sell off the property. And so for the marketing office, there was a reception table, and behind that reception table, there was a space of 6 meters by 4 meters, and they wanted some artwork to be made out of fabric and or any element of textiles, and inspired by Kohinoor diamond.
Okay.
So, and because the theme of the office was sunsets, so the color palette was also sunsets. So I was hired precisely to come up with that artwork.
Wait, hang on. So the first project that you work on for an architect is 6 meters by 4 meters?
By 4 meters, yes.
Oh my, that's
yes.
a huge project. How long did that take
That's
you
a
to
huge
do?
project. For an intern.
Yeah.
I was not even working.
Right.
Yeah, I was not even working.
So how long did that take you to get it done?
The internship was 6 months. Out of which the first 2 months I was just exploring the space, exploring different techniques of folding, exploring different mediums of textiles that I could possibly use. Also going and experiencing the space because it was still under construction.
Yeah.
So, and I was also waiting for the construction to get over, to reach a certain point where I could then place my artwork there. Because you know how architecture works. They tell you it will be done in so many days, and it's never done in that much
right.
time. So so the entire process of designing the artwork took around a month, and then executing it took 2 months. So total of three and a half months.
So now after you've finished with NID and you've had this unique internship at an architect's office coming in from your background, which is quite different. I suppose now is when you start your first job.
Yes.
So where did you end up working the minute you got out of college?
So I wanted to do more such projects, honestly, where I could explore more architecture, explore more space, and exercise more origami because I was enjoying it so much. But at the same time, I also wanted to survive and have a job. So I did try to find a
Yeah.
few opportunities. I did meet a lot of architects in Mumbai because I wanted to stay in Mumbai. I didn't want to move away from it. So within Mumbai, by the end
Yeah.
of my internship, I was looking for opportunities, but I couldn't really find one. So,
Yeah.
so I was not left with any other option but to find a job with a textile company. So,
Okay.
by the end of it, I had to apply to a few export houses, mills, and finally, I got a job with an export house where I worked for a year. But in that 1 year, I also got to travel to Karur, which is where you are, very close to you, very close to Chennai. So I really liked that experience where I went to Karur and experienced the actual textile and how they were manufacturing it there, how the textile was being weaved, all the process of textiles actually were experienced.
Yeah.
So I liked that part, but the whole process of it was not really that much fun for me, and especially the aspect where you work with someone where there is a boss and you have to report to that person every day. I did not like that part,
Yeah.
honestly, at all. So I barely worked there for a year, and then I was getting married, so I quit. And I wanted to take a break from work, from studies, because I had not really taken a break. I directly started working after college.
All right.
So I wanted to give some time to that. And after I got married, that's when I started then again, because there was no other opportunity. I was not really interested in textiles. So I was not looking
Yeah.
for a textile company job per se, but I was looking to do something where I could survive, where I could make money, honestly. So that's when I got into teaching,
Yeah.
because I knew teaching is something that came to me naturally, and I knew that people are looking for people like me who are from good design colleges, um, could help children who are aspiring to be
Yeah.
designers, could help them. So that's how I started working with I started literally, I started working at ground level. I started teaching in a coaching institute in Mumbai where I worked for 2 years, where I just,
Oh,
yeah, it
okay.
was a coaching institute where students who are applying to colleges like NIFT, NID, Pearl used to come, and it was a 2 year course. So that's where I started, and then I started after I was done teaching at the coaching institute, and I wanted to move up the ladder. I joined IIST, which is Indian Institute of it's an Indian school for design in Mumbai. So
Okay.
yeah, and then I also started teaching at places like NIFT, NID as a visiting faculty. So that's how I panned out in my teaching career.
But that's pretty fascinating that how many years of experience did you have at the point where you started teaching so much?
Honestly, you don't really have now design colleges don't really look at your experience as much. I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
talking about NID. NID still looks for experience, but other colleges like
Yeah.
Pearl, NIFT, they are recruiting students right after college as faculty.
Okay.
So because
Okay.
they're also looking for new and fresh minds to teach.
Yeah.
So I think you don't really need an experience in teaching as such,
That actually my question was not related to the colleges themselves having
okay, but
requirements.
you yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I know people who did not have the confidence to go and teach.
Exactly. So I didn't have the
Yeah.
confidence to teach in a college,
Right.
to teach in
Right.
a real class, and I had never taught before that. So because I was starting and I wanted to see experience, I wanted to know if I'm a good teacher, if I wanted to be sure of it. That's why I started teaching in a coaching institute. And initially, I did have a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Where not problems as such, but challenges, just relating to students and
Yeah.
how do you simplify things for them. So these kind of
Yeah.
problems came up, but I think I had enough experience in teaching then. I taught there for 2 years, and then I felt more confident. I was more sure of whether I can do it, whether I wanted to do it. And I extremely loved the process of teaching, because it's not just teaching, it's also about learning. Every day you learn
Yeah.
something new. And especially in the field of field of design or any creative field, you're constantly exposed to so many different perspectives towards the same object that you're looking at. So constantly,
Yeah.
every student, it sort of opens a new door in your mind. And I loved that process where I'm not just teaching but also learning. And the kind of classes, I've always been a very open kind of a faculty where I would allow students to do whatever they wanted to do, to
Yeah.
feel free, to exercise their creativity. I never gave them a direction or never wanted to tie them down to uh, uh, one theme or one. Basically, I always wanted them to discover their own strengths
Yeah. Yeah.
by exercising them, you know. So
Yeah.
I think that is why I loved teaching so much, because it was so much fun teaching. You were just being yourself. You were just being like a mentor, helping these students to discover their own capabilities and continue
Yeah.
practicing them. So
I-
yeah, because I loved it so much, I wanted to teach more. That's why I applied to other design colleges then, and continued teaching for the next 4 years.
Okay.
And
That's a
but
good amount of time.
yeah, because and I was also training students, helping them with their portfolios for design colleges. So
Right.
I had enough work at that time to survive, and not just survive but to enjoy it and survive.
How did you actually build the contacts with these institutions to get on board with them? Was that hard, or is that a complicated process?
See, at the same time, my friends, my course mates, my batchmates were also teaching at different colleges. So I was in touch
Right.
with them as well. So that was, that made connections very easy. Even today, I have a lot of my friends who are teaching in NID, at NIFT, at Shrishti, at Pearl, you know, all the top design colleges. I know people working there, so then the connection becomes easier. And I never wanted to be yes, another thing I should mention, I never wanted to be a full-time faculty. I always wanted to be a drifter. I always
Okay.
wanted to be a visiting faculty where I was free to do whatever I wanted to do, and at the same time would be teaching. So I got a lot of opportunities to take a small workshop, you know, a weekend workshop or a 1 week workshop with these colleges. So
Yeah.
that helped.
Okay. You know, so far we have talked quite a bit about your time in school and your bachelor's and then your master's and then your first job and now you're teaching. But we haven't yet gotten to the meat of the work that you do, which is in origami. So how did that actually begin? Where did that come from? Did you pick that up from somebody?
Yes, so origami was a 2 weeks course which happened when I was in NID. My teacher Onkun Mitra came to take that course in NID, which so in NID we have something called a departmental elective where they expose us
Okay.
to a craft or a technique which is very different from what you do, but at the same time you can marry them. Okay, so that is how origami happened. And
Yeah.
while the course, I really enjoyed the process. I realized that I'm good at it, that it can be fun if I keep doing it. So even when the course was over, I still continued folding for a very very long time. Then I integrated
Yeah.
folding in my space project, the project that I was talking to you about.
Yeah.
Then when I went for my diploma project, which was with Kohinoor Square and the artwork I'm talking about, again
Yeah.
I fell back on origami and I tried to bring some elements of it in my work, because origami was always something that was very exciting. I was constantly inspired by it, and I always
Yeah.
wanted to bring something back from there. You know, something
Right.
that was inspired by origami, but I could bring it to my work in whatever medium that I was working with. So
Yeah.
that urge was always there. But after my diploma project, I joined a textile company and I started teaching. So origami sort of took a back seat, but I was
Right.
still constantly folding. In my free time, I was still folding, making useless lamps out of it, which now seem useless, but then seem beautiful.
Yeah.
And So I was constantly folding. I had been folding ever since I was a child. Um, but never knew that I could do something out of it. It was something, you give me a paper and I would be folding.
Yeah.
So whether I'm in a restaurant, whether I'm watching a movie and I have that little ticket in my hand, I was always folding. So yeah, even while I was teaching, I was folding. And that's when
It's
this
sort of,
opportunity
yeah.
came up, when my teacher, who had come to NID, was looking for an assistant for his work. For someone,
Okay.
he was looking for somebody who could help out with the projects, who could help with the origami part of his projects. And that got me really excited. I was in Mumbai that time and his office was in Delhi. But I was all ready to shift my house from Mumbai to Delhi and just work with him, just learn more origami, just do more folding, because it was I was so drawn towards it constantly. And I did do some projects with origami on my own. I collaborated with small architects in Mumbai and did some workshops with design colleges. But I never really was able to give my 100% to origami, because honestly, I did not know how to make money out of it. So,
Yeah.
this opportunity of working with Ankun and going back to him and learning um, this game, but a better game, and
Yeah.
coming back to it from a different perspective and learning it from a different mindset now was very exciting for me. So that's when I applied to him, but and I started doing a lot of projects with him, a lot of independent projects where he would give me a project, I would work on it in Mumbai, and then I would go back to Delhi, complete it. So
So you were
yeah,
actually in two separate cities the whole time.
the whole time. And when I had to actually work on a project, like as long as we were doing the prototyping of it, that could be done from anywhere through video conferencing, so we did
Right.
that. But when we actually had to work on an artwork, that's when I would come to Delhi for 15, 20 odd days, and I would work here, finish the work, and then fly back. So I
Okay.
did that for a lot of projects, enjoyed the process like anything, learned
Yeah.
so much more than what I was doing at home. I learned to use other mediums other than paper. I learned to
Yeah.
understand. I learned to understand bigger artworks, to how to work on larger than life pieces, how to make installations, how to hang heavy artworks um, uh, on the ceiling, and
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so all of that I would say I learned from him. And in that process I fell in love with origami even more, and to a point that I contemplated, what do I want to call myself? Do I still want to call myself a textile designer, which I'm not doing anymore, or
Yeah.
whether I want to be called as an origami artist. So that was a very interesting transformation.
So what was the conclusion? What did you decide to call yourself?
I because then I was like completely doing origami full time. I
Yeah.
knew I couldn't hold on to textiles anymore because I wasn't doing it, so there was no point. It was just a word on my resume then, you know.
Yeah.
Other than that,
Yeah. I get it.
I was not really practicing it or doing justice to it. So I would
Yeah.
rather call something what I was doing and do justice to that completely than to
Yeah.
hold on to something that was not really a part of me as much as the other
Yeah.
thing was. So, yeah, I mean, I took a lot of time to actually finalize into what I wanted to call myself, a paper folder, an origami artist. I, in fact, coined the word origamist. That makes, I mean, and
Wait,
I wrote that
so
on
that is
in
not a proper word to describe what you do?
Not really.
It
Yeah,
seems
yeah.
almost
So that's
logical.
why I coined my own word. I call myself origamist, an origami artist, an origamist.
Yeah.
And a lot of people laughed at me, like, oh, I mean, they still do. I'm like, oh, what does that mean? But
Yeah. Yeah.
but now that I laugh at it, at that time it was such a difficult decision for me, because I knew that if I leave
Yeah.
textiles, I might never be able to catch it again. And
Correct.
I did
Yeah.
not know if origami would give me enough substance, or would give me enough would be enough for me to survive for the
Yeah.
rest of my life, or whether I would continue getting projects, work, money out of it or not. But that was a decision that I had to take. I could not work in origami and call myself a textile designer. That just confuses people, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like if
That's right.
people ask me today,
Absolutely.
so what do you do? I can't tell them I'm a textile designer, but I do origami. So so yeah, that was a big decision that I had to take, and I had to sort of leave that part. I mean, I studied textiles for 8 years. 8 years.
Yeah.
I did my graduation in textiles, my post graduation in textiles, and so I've come back to textiles now. I'm doing a lot of projects which involve textiles and origami. One of which you can see right there. I don't know if you can see it there. Can you see that blue thing on the wall?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah. I
ombre
can.
dyed. That's ombre dyed silk,
Okay.
and I folded it. So I've now started doing artworks out of textiles. I'm making a huge chandelier out of it, actually, using origami and silk fabric.
You just touched upon something that I was very interested in. You touched upon it very briefly, which was hanging up a heavy installation, right? No one connects paper with being heavy, but obviously it really is. And as you said, not all the works that you do are in paper. Metal is obviously going to be very heavy, and so will fabric and textiles. So, what is your process like, just simply to fit the installation in place, to install it wherever it's being used? Is that a very complicated process? Does your design process also affect how it's installed?
Yes, so the main factors of when we're designing something like that, of that scale, is the most important point is budget. What is the budget of the entire process? Because that decides, that makes us understand how much time can we give in this project, how many people can we hire
Yeah.
for this project, what material can we use for this project, and yeah, the three major things that we need is it all depends on the budget, and of course on the space. So
Yeah.
if we have limited time, but if we have a bigger project to work on, then we would need that many more people, and that much more money we would have to
Right.
spend on these people to give them, right? Um,
Yeah.
so if we have like a big project which has to be hung, then you have to do a lot of reverse calculations, where how much time will we need to hang the piece, how many people will we need for the installation, and what kind of material will
Yeah.
we be using, because it also depends on what kind of arrangements do we have in that space, how can we hang it. We need very strong hooks to be available
Yeah.
where we need to hang it. So if we have good enough hooks, then we can precisely use any material. But out of all the materials that we use, paper is the lightest, but that doesn't mean that paper is light. Paper is very, very heavy.
Yeah.
I mean, we have made installations that were 250 kgs, and we managed to hang them to 4 hooks.
Wow.
So yeah, but then of course polypropylene gets heavier, and so does leather. Leather is very expensive. You can't even afford a leather installation, like a full-on
Yeah.
leather installation. But yeah, polypropylene is even more heavier than paper. So these kind of things you need to understand when you look at a space, when you go for your Reiki of the space. So you make these
Yeah.
notes, give these notes to yourself of the arrangement. Then of course the budget, and I would say making of an artwork is only 50% of the of the work. 50% is when you actually there hanging that artwork to the ceiling, because that's when a lot of, not just hanging but installing any artwork is 50%
Yeah.
of the work. It can be hanging 4,000 birds to the ceiling, which I did for a project, which I did for a wedding in Chennai. 4,000 birds,
4,000.
4,000 cranes done in one night.
Wow.
And it was not easy to hang those birds. I mean, to to coordinate with so many people who were involved in the hanging process, and how to hang them, and how far should they be from each other, how, what is the height of the bird to the ceiling, everything had to be, uh, kept in mind while designing that artwork and while hanging the
Yeah.
installation. So yeah, I would say it is not easy to install anything, actually, not just origami, but to have that kind of a vision and to make it possible, you really need a lot of patience for it. So
I can imagine.
yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
I mean, 50% of the work happens after you've made the artwork and when you're on site, when you're installing it, when you have to make last minute changes, when when you're trying to lift an artwork and your ropes are burning because the artwork is so heavy and the rope is not able to take the weight, then you have to change the entire roping of the artwork. So yeah, those kind of decisions have to be made last minute, and you can never imagine those kind of
Yeah. So
problems when they
I
do
guess when you
happen.
have limited time in
That's
a
why I
different
say,
city, it's a lot about the pre-planning.
yes, you have limited time. Yes, you have limited time. You have limited time. You have limited resources. I mean, so the artwork that I'm talking about, where the artwork was 250 kgs, the sculpture was 250 kgs, and we took these ropes from Delhi, thinking that these ropes would be enough, but sadly they weren't. We had only 2 days to install the artwork, and we took a weekend. We chose a weekend to install it, and because the ropes were not working, we had to buy a new set of
Lovely.
ropes, and that day was a Sunday, and the entire Mumbai was shut. I was running around in the city in a cab looking for ropes, but I couldn't find the kind of ropes that I wanted, because the entire Crawford market was shut. The entire where the hardcore hardware stuff you find in Mumbai was shut. So we had to stay back for another day. Monday morning, I went to the shops, bought the new rope, and that's how we were able to install it. We bought pulleys. All these last minute changes had to be done. We bought small pulleys, hung the
Yeah.
pulleys on the hooks so that pulling the artwork becomes slightly easier on the ropes.
Oh, so it seems like every single installation is so different, right?
Every single installation has some challenge,
Yeah.
has some. You would sit here and feel, this is easy.
Yeah.
This is. I mean, I made a hexagon, a huge hexagon had to be made, which was around 5 feet diameter
Yeah.
of the hexagon.
Yeah.
So they wanted an artwork, and then they wanted a board behind it, and then they wanted it to be framed. So my work was done in one day. When I was done, not in one day but in a week. So my artwork was done in a week. But the bigger challenge was to stick that artwork to plywood. Now the plywood had to be of a certain thickness, because otherwise it wouldn't be straight, because it was of that scale.
Yeah.
So it had to be of a certain thickness. And once that was done, we realized that the artwork is so heavy. It was so heavy. I mean, imagine.
Yeah.
Almost two full-size plywoods went in the making of that hexagon.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it had to be framed. So finding that size of glass was a challenge.
Yeah.
And
And the glass weighs a ton as well.
yeah, finding that size of glass, then cutting it, getting it cut into a hexagon, framing the artwork, and then the story doesn't end there. It had to be couriered to Bangalore. So I don't know how the client managed. I was like, I cannot take the load of getting it couriered. I can handle it till the framing part.
Yeah.
My God, the glass itself was for 20,000. The glass. So you will think if this is easy. Like that hexagon, making that hexagon was so easy.
Yeah.
But compared to the other things that followed it, my God. So no project is ever easy.
You know, you're talking about a five foot diameter hexagon. I made a 5 foot panoramic print, which was hanging above my desk in my office, and
Wow.
that print it just looks like a very simple print because it's a very simple picture on it, but it's big, right? And once we got it framed, because and you can't use a sort of plastic frame, which is what most frames are, because it's so big, plastic will just flex. So it needed to have a hard,
Exactly.
it needed to have the hardwood backing, and it needed to have a hardwood frame, and then it needed to have proper glass in it. So the whole thing weighed about 20 kilos, and it was just one single.
I totally understand.
Yeah,
I
so then
totally
when you
understand.
hang it up,
Yeah.
how many nails do you put in the wall to hold up that frame? So,
That's exactly what I'm saying. You would feel that it's that's easy, but making an artwork is only 50% of the work. 50% is taking it there and installing it. But it is so exciting. I feel the joy that you get after you're done with the work and you sit back, relax, and look at it.
yeah.
It's the most rewarding thing in the world, I would say.
You know, there's two questions that I had about the work you do. One is, you know, you obviously have the sort of clients who give you the freedom that you really need and you really want, right? So how long did that take you to get these types of clients? Was that settling in period a very long one, or did you?
No, I started getting these kind of clients from the very beginning, who would give me the freedom to work on the project however I wanted. They of course gave me a few outlines of course, first being the budget.
Yeah.
So I had to think within that, and some people gave me an outline of gave me the material that they wanted to work with, so that was another limitation that I had.
Yeah.
But other than that, design wise, I never had any limitations. I could do whatever I wanted to do, however I wanted to do, as long as I'm making something beautiful, as long as I'm making something within their budget.
Yeah.
I was very lucky that ways, I would say, that my client gave me. But you know, the kind of work that I do also helped because people don't really imagine, they don't really know origami. It is still so new to them.
Yeah.
So they trust my expertise.
Yeah.
And so when they give me a project, they would only want to see a small prototype of what it's going to look like, and then they leave it on me completely. So I really am very thankful for that.
You know, it's very unusual because architects themselves don't get all the exact sort of work that they want early on, because it's very hard to trust someone who's new to a particular field with, you know, complete creative freedom. It's the same for photographers as well, same for people who work in the technical side of the movie industry. But do you feel like you got that kind of creative freedom because origami is so
See, I would also say that because initially I did a lot of projects with Onkel, so that gave me a good body of work to show to my clients.
Right.
Of the kind of work that I had already done. So that gave them a little bit of trust on me.
Right.
And that helped me also to have a little bit of trust on myself, whether this was possible or not possible, how much risk could I take, how much could I challenge myself with the medium or the scale or the fold, you know.
Yeah.
So I think a good body of work is something that would help both of you,
Yeah.
you as a maker and your client as a buyer,
Yeah.
to have that much trust on what is going to come out. of it. So I think that helped.
And so obviously no one gets to where they are without having a couple of big breaks that happened along the way, right? So would probably one of your more visible projects, which I didn't even know was yours until we talked earlier, was Sacred Games. I had obviously seen your work there without knowing that was yours. So how did that happen?
It also happened through Instagram. I mean, they found me, they found my work on Instagram, and they were looking for something new for their sets. And because they were working on the entire story of Sacred Games was based on self-realization, and Kalki, one of their main characters, was working on meditation and doing things that are self-healing. So they found origami to be a very good uh, technique to bring in for the process, and encourage that. So that's how I came in the picture. And while we were actually going through the kind of elements that they were looking for the sets, they showed me the logo of Sacred Games. And the minute I saw that logo, I literally begged them. I was like, "Can I please make this in origami? Because this logo has origami all around it. It was so geometric. The minute I saw it, I could visualize the folds in it, and I was like, I have to make it." And that got them so excited because they were looking for something for Kalki's office. They wanted a huge artwork to be there in her office. So they gave me a shot, and they were like, "Why don't you make a small piece and show it to us? And if we like it, we would buy it." So within 24 hours, they had a prototype in front of them. I was sitting in their office with work, and I was like, "Give it to me." Yeah, so that's how it happened. But like I say, if you love it, you will find ways to, bring it out or to project it to the world. Like, I never knew this is going to be a big break for me, honestly, but it turned out to be, and it turned out beautiful. And the way they have put it up in the office, because I had no imagination of what it is going to look like, whether it's going to be far in the background, or whether it's going to, or whether the scene is going to start with that artwork where you look at the artwork and the camera rolls back. And then you see the office of Kalki. That is how I had imagined it to be. My artwork would look so beautiful like that. But that never happened. But I had no idea how they were going to shoot it. Even the people, the production team who were communicating with me, I constantly called them and asked them, have you used it? How have they used it? They're like, "You'll get to see it in the show."
So you had to wait until the show was done, just like everyone else?
Yes. So the day Sacred Games was releasing, I had not seen their season 1. But season 2, I mean, I saw the entire series just so that I knew कि किस scene में you could see my artwork, And there's some 3 scenes in which you can see it. So that got me.
And did that also bring you more attention and like work coming your way?
Yes, of course it did. Of course it did. Because I immediately put it up on Instagram, and Sacred Games was also very new at that time. Now you have so many series coming up, but back then, this was around 3 years back, Netflix was absolutely new in India, and people were really going crazy over Sacred Games. So thankfully, that got a lot of eyes towards me. And after that, a lot of people approached me for that.
And you get most of your work through Instagram, or is it through a lot of mouth?
Almost all
word
of it
of mouth.
through Instagram.
Okay.
All of it. Yeah. So Instagram has been very important for my work because it does one thing so well. It helps you find people, and it helps people find you. So that it does so seamlessly and so easily. I think that's what makes it so brilliant as a software, as an application for people to use. And that is why the whole world is on Instagram. Thank God for that. And also because everybody is so approachable on Instagram, right? Like if I if I want to write something to, let's say, Deepika Padukone, I know that if I DM her, her team would get that message. I know it. That if it's worth it, it will reach her. Earlier, before Instagram,
Yeah.
there was no way I could contact somebody like Deepika Padukone. She was too far-fetched,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But now at least there is a way. Even if you're not found, even if she doesn't, I mean, her team doesn't find your message important, at least it would reach somewhere
Yeah.
where you know the direction is right.
Yeah. Even if it's a small chance, it's still a chance.
Exactly,
Yeah.
it's still a chance.
Yeah.
Like, exactly, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to find people now, to approach so many architects, so many event designers. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just made the entire process of finding people and being found so much easier.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, my entire work is through Instagram. Thanks to Instagram.
So now, how long have you been working independently? For about 5 years now? 6 years?
In Origami,
Yeah.
around 5 years.
Right. So, how long did it take for you to feel like the work was stable, the business was stable?
I would say when I started getting, so there were always projects coming up from Ankan's side. He was always looking for people. So I knew that there is enough work out there. I mean, people are looking
Yeah.
for new opportunities. People are looking for something new to give to their residential spaces, their commercial spaces, to hotels.
Yeah.
I mean, there was to events. There was such a big market for something, something that makes people go wow, right, out there.
Yeah.
Which I
Yeah.
realized while I was doing projects with Ankan. And then after doing a couple of projects and after I started putting up work on my Instagram handle, I started getting projects on my own. So,
Yeah.
so that was very helpful because that made me realize that there is enough potential. I will get work, and I will be able to sustain myself. Of course, there would be times when there would be no work, but then I could always fall back on teaching, and I could. That's what thankfully pandemic did. While pandemic, there was no as such architectural work that I did, installation work that I
Right.
did, but all of the revenue that I was able to generate came from teaching, where for the first time I delved into online origami teaching. I mean, I had never imagined teaching origami through
Yeah.
from a screen, but because
Yeah.
before pandemic, I took a lot of workshops, physical workshops, where I was traveling to different cities all over the country to take these physical workshops, but pandemic opened different types
Yeah.
of doors for me. So that's
Yeah.
when I came up with the origami kit that I've made now, where anybody can fold
Yeah.
with the material that is there. So yeah, of course, that things lead, one thing leads to another. You know, that's how it organically happened.
Considering you're doing something quite unique and you've had varied experiences in different places, but throughout this whole period that you've been working, did you ever feel that, did you know what you were doing the whole time? Was that ever the end? What you're doing today, was that the end goal? Was it a concentrated effort to get there?
No, it was never. It was never. If you ask me today, what am I doing or where am I heading towards?
Yeah.
I don't have an answer to that because as new as origami is for you guys or for anyone else
Yeah.
outside, the person who's walking on the road, it is that much. It is that new for me as well. So I'm
Yeah.
also exploring it as I'm practicing it. There are new things that I discover every day. Thanks to Instagram, I get to see how people from all over the world or people different parts of the world are using origami in so many different ways, and that inspires me, gives me ideas as to how can I involve that here in this country with the limitations that we have. How can I integrate it more in people's life? How can I make it how can I make products out of it that people would be able to relate to, would be able to use on an everyday basis? So I'm also
Yeah.
exploring it as I'm going, I don't imagine myself, like if you ask me, where do you imagine yourself 5 years from now? I would say, I don't know. I really don't know. There is something that I wanted to do last year, which I'm going to do this year for sure. I wanted to go to Spiti for a month and teach origami to the street children there, like carry a lot of paper and
Yeah.
just fold with them, get new ideas from them, because they have seen world from a very different point of view, and get ideas from the mountains, get them back to the city, and maybe make an artwork out of what they have
Yeah.
created. uh, but that was, like I said, I'm a drifter. I don't know where I'm heading towards, and it sounds very stupid, I know, but that's the only thing that excites me about
Yeah.
origami, is that it's so new. It's constantly, I am meeting new people who I can collaborate with. Constantly, I'm finding new ways of bringing it out, of encouraging people to fold. I'm going to like, for example, I'm going to have a workshop this weekend, which is a 2 days workshop where um, all the participants would be getting a box that I've created. I'll be showing that box here as well. And all the participants would be getting this box, and I would be teaching them origami models made out of the elements that come out of the box. So that is going to be a very different experience. I've never done that, where I know exactly the material that people are going to use. So having that control is also very nerve-wracking, and at the same time very exciting. So I'm always looking for new experiences as an artist, and I don't want to take one road. I don't want to stick to one type of fold and do only that and make that my forte, or have one style of work and make that my forte. I don't want to do that. I'm always looking for how else can I project, or how else can I bring out origami in a way that the world had never imagined before, which there's already enough happening if you follow people on Instagram to see, my God, the kind of things that people are creating using folding as a technique. But I have a different clientele here in India, and I can take advantage of it, and can project it in that direction. And here I have the power to steer the boat, and because I have no precedent in front of me, I can take it wherever I want to, or do whatever I want to do with it. And I think I'm just enjoying that process, and I would hopefully continue to do that. The thought of stagnating in a place, making a studio where there are people working for me and I have to give them salaries, is so daunting to me right now. I might end up doing it. I'm not denying it. So it should not happen that tomorrow I have an office and then you come and question me.
Yeah.
Like, oh, but you said something else in my interview. So, like I said, I'm always open to new ideas. I mean, I love that
Flexibility.
part of what I do, and
Yeah.
I want to stick to that. So if I want to take an off, I can take an off. That is how I imagine working.
I think that's a good point at which to close out this conversation. Thank you very much for doing this, Aditi.
Thank you so much for having me. I mean, I have never done such a long interview with anyone. There have been enough interviews that I've done in this 1 year, thanks to the pandemic, where I had to talk about my work or show my work. But this has been so different because I had never really talked about from the beginning.
Yeah.
It all started from, so how did you start origami?
Yeah.
There was no interview that started before origami. So what was your childhood like? How was your school like? I mean, these are the conversations that I've had only with, like, school conversations happen only with school friends,
Yes.
right? I would not discuss my college, my school life with my college friends with that much detail. But it was so interesting how we spoke about these things and found out that we almost come from the same kind of background.
Yeah.
And I guess all of us who are from our generation are 33, 34 right now, come from a similar background.
Yeah.
So Yeah, that was very interesting to connect those dots.
Yeah. No, but for me, it was so important to do something like this because I feel it gives a lot of validation to anyone who listens to it because they will relate to what you have gone through.
To what you do
Yeah.
today.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sreenag. Thank you so much for having me. I had a wonderful time recording this.
Well, that's our show for this week. You can find links to get in touch with my guests in the episode description below on YouTube, or if you're listening to the audio podcast, just swipe or tap over the cover art. You can watch other full episodes and curated playlists at everythingcomestogether.com. Please subscribe to Sreenag Pictures on YouTube, or you can listen to the audio podcast by subscribing to Everything Comes Together on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and leave a 5-star review. If you like this episode, please tell a friend about it and help get the word out about this show. The music for this podcast was composed by Aashray Harishankar from Escapist Music, post-production by Thiruvikraman Srinivasaraghavan, and production assistance by Abdul Jeelani. Until we meet again with another fascinating guest, you can reach me on Instagram at Sreenag or at everythingcomestogether.com. Have a good day.